بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam is the messenger of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Last week we spoke about some important matters with regards to the way that a Muslim man should carry himself, and likewise the way that a Muslim woman should carry herself, and how each gender should behave with regards to the way that they interact. And what we finished with last week was mentioning that it is important for a man to lower his gaze. It is important for a man, if he finds a woman attractive, to follow the order of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, which is that he should lower his gaze, he should look away, because it is not permissible for a male to look at a marriageable female with desire, whether that is at her face or her hand, even if her arm, for example, was covered properly, even if she had a scarf on and she was covered properly, to look at her with desire, which means to look at her whilst one is enjoying oneself. One experiences enjoyment. One experiences a sense of pleasure. For a male, this is haram, even this look. And this look is the one about which the Prophet ﷺ said, Kullu aynin zaniya, meaning that most of the men, this is excluding prophets and some of the highly ranked awliya, most of the men, they look this forbidden look. He said, alayhi salatu wassalam, وَزِنَ الْعَيْنِ النَّظَرِ, that the zina, if you will, the fornication of the eye is to look. And this is because this is a test for the people, a test for men and a test for women, that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala created people like this, created men, and that they would be attracted to women, and created women such that they would be attracted to men, the opposite gender. And we gave an example of a hadith in the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, where there was a woman who had wajhun mushriq. She had wada'ah in her face, meaning that she had a radiant face. The narrators mentioned that she had a beautiful face. She came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, and she was a female companion, and she asked him a question. With the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, there was a companion, his first cousin, known as Al-Fadl ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam feared that there may be desire there. So what was better? He moved the face of his cousin away. And he alayhi salatu wasalam, he is known as to being ma'moon al-fitna, meaning that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam obviously doesn't look the forbidden look like all the prophets, and he is safe from that. As for another man, as for most men, if they were to look, then because of a whisper of the devil or because of a desire of the nafs, they would begin to look with desire. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said to one of the companions, "La tutbi'i nadratan nadra." Don't follow one look up with a second. Meaning, if you look at a female, because one is allowed to look at the face of a female without desire, a female who is not one's wife, for example, she's an ajnabiyya, it's permissible for him to marry her. If a man is talking to a woman and he's looking at her face, as long as there is no desire, then this is permissible. But The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ means that as soon as there is desire, then you must look away. It is haram for you to continue looking. It is fard, it is obligatory upon you to look away. فَإِنَّ لَكَ الْأُولَى, meaning that if you start off talking to a woman, then you're allowed to look because you don't feel any desire. But as soon as you do, if you experience desire, then you have to look away. It's haram. It is haram for a person to continue, for a male to continue looking like this. Like we said, even if it's at a part of her body that is covered up, if desire comes into it, then it is haram. We mentioned the issue also of speaking to a female over the phone. Some people, some men, they would experience pleasure when speaking to an ajnabiyya, someone that is not one's wife, over the phone. And if this desire occurs, then it's not permissible for them to continue. So anyway, we spoke about the situation of a female, of an attractive female. But likewise, in the past and nowadays, there are, as the scholars mention, attractive men. In the time of our master Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, there was a man known as Nasr ibn al-Hajjaj. And Nasr ibn al-Hajjaj was known to be very handsome. He was in Al-Iraq, in Al-Basra. And many of the women at that time, when he came to Al-Madinah, many of the women, they found him to be attractive. Such that in the time of our master Umar, when he was the Khalifa, so after our master Abu Bakr, radiyallahu anhu, he walked past a house, and in this house there was a woman. He heard a woman's voice. And the woman, she was saying, هل من سبيل إلى خمر فأشربها هل من سبيل إلى نصر بن حجاج. She was saying in a verse of poetry that how I wish that I found a way to some wine such that I could drink it. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And then she said, هل من سبيل, and how I wish I found a way to Nasr ibn Hajjaj. So Umar radiyallahu anhu, he said to himself, أَمَّا وَأَنَا حَيٌّ فَلَا. As long as I am alive, no. As long as I am alive, this is something haram that I will not let happen. It's not like these two people are married. So he asked the people in Al-Madinah, who is Nasr ibn Hajjaj? And they directed him towards him, to the Khalifa. So Umar radiyallahu anhu saw this person, and he was a handsome young male. So Umar radiyallahu anhu thought to shave his head. Let's shave his head, maybe he'll become less attractive. So Umar radiyallahu anhu shaved his head. So they say, فَازْدَادَ جَمَالًا. And because of that, his beauty increased. So Umar radiyallahu anhu, what he did was, he sent him away. He said to him, please leave Al-Madinah, because I don't want the women of Al-Madinah to become corrupt or for this fitna to occur to them. And many of the scholars, they mention this situation. Many of them, they also mention, they take it further, and they mention that he said to him, or he said to some people about him, when it reached him that some of these things are still going on in another place. So he said, Juzu sha'arahu, he said, shave his head. وَشَمِّرُوا قَمِيصَهُ, and make sure he wears garments that are not attractive. And he said, وَأَلْزِمُوهُ الْمَسْجِدِ, and keep him in the masjid. Keep him in the masjid. This means that there were things even in those times, even in the past, like this that existed. There is an ayah that was revealed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam about some people who used to come to his masjid, to al-Masjid al-Nabawi, and they would come and pray behind the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So the men would pray, then after that the children would pray, the non-pubescent children, and then after that the women would pray. And this is fine. But what some people used to do was, some of the men, they used to not try to pray in the first row, which is recommended, and people should they should compete to pray in the first row. They used to pray in the last row of men. And then it was narrated that when they used to go into a ruku', they used to try to look at some of the women from underneath their armpits. So they would try to look when they're in ruku'. So this ayah was revealed that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows those amongst you that try to get to the first row, and Allah knows those amongst you that try to stay towards the back for these reasons. So this existed even at those times. We mentioned last week about people trying to do something that's not praised. We spoke about people who want to be known, whether it's a male or a female. This about wanting to be known, wanting to be famous, wanting to be popular, wanting to be known by people, this is not something healthy. This is why the scholars mention, as I mentioned last week, hubbul zuhur, to love to be zahir, like we say zair, to love to be apparent, zahir, yaqsimu zuhur, it breaks backs, meaning it completely takes away from your integrity. To love to be someone who's known by everybody, everybody knows their name, they are the main contact, they are the one that makes everything work, everybody tries to talk to them when something is needed. And to want to be like this, usually it's not a good thing, because there might be somebody who wants to be known like that because they're among the awliya and they can help and they can answer people's questions, and this is a different matter. But in general, for most of us, this is not something good to want to be known. Like some of the scholars said that a sincere slave is a slave that would love to do the deeds that he does among the people. He would love to do those deeds inside a dark well, a well that is dried up. Down there it will be dark. No one's going to see him do that deed. That's where he should love to do every deed, because he doesn't want to do the deeds for the people. So that's where he should love to do every single deed. Now, if he finds that when he's down in that well, he wouldn't do that deed, and he'd rather do it in front of the people, then there are eyebrows raised. Some people suffer from a lack of attention. When they find this attention, this praise, this warmth, this kindness, and they find someone caring, they feel now that their life is more meaningful and fruitful. This makes them feel appreciated. This is the case for many humans. When they get attention, it's like a breath of fresh air for them. After a period of not being noticed, then when they get noticed, it's like a breath of fresh air for them, and it puts a spring in their step. And this is when it happens suddenly. It comes, for example, at a time of hardship. Such a person in this situation is very vulnerable and very gullible, very naive. So at this point, anyone who praises this person, anyone who says something good about them, tries to befriend them, then that person goes straight into their, what we might call their good books. When it's someone of the opposite gender that is doing the praising, then the attention, the praise, the warmth, the kindness, the softness, the femininity, then even more so, especially if this male is physically attracted to this female. So this constant validation, plus having this female who is aesthetically pleasing to him to see and to hear, where does this lead? Where does this lead? Imagine there is a husband who is going through some rough times. He's going through something rough. A situation with his wife and his children, his in-laws. And then suddenly there is a female who, we mentioned parts of this last week. She speaks to him in a very soft way, not like his wife does, because they spend most of the day arguing about the in-laws, for example. She is warm to him, she's friendly, she offers to help, she lends an ear. Where does this lead? We'll continue this soon. Some people have had a lot of attention in their lives. So they grow up feeling privileged and entitled. And a lot of this is the fault of the parents, a lot of the time. A lot of the time, it is the fault of the parents. Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, Abu al-Faraj, the Sunni scholar, not Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, the student of Ibn Taymiyyah, who the Wahhabiyah follow. Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, said, Ahibbu hawnan, which literally means if you love, then love softly. If you love your children, or you love your husband, or you love your wife, or you love in a way that doesn't make the other person become complacent. Love in a way, I don't overdo it, because this might spoil the other person. Like we'd say, for example, बच्चियां की वो प्यार ना दियो या कि बच्चे खराब हो जासन सिरे बचे जासन, right? Like that, same thing with some family members. वो प्यार ना दियो यार सिरे बचे जाने, right? Don't give them too much love, because this might spoil the relationship. So let's see this person who has had constant attention. They feel privileged, they feel entitled. So this son grows up, this daughter grows up with the wrong manners. This son or this daughter then will be a nightmare for the man she marries. This son, what kind of husband is he going to be? Allahu yarhamuna, may Allah protect us. So what is needed is tough love. Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, radiyallahu anhu, he was an orphan. His father died. So his mother raised him. His mother was very, very tough with him. It is known that she would say that I want my son to become a scholar. I want my son to be a person of high status religiously. I want him to be pious. So what did she used to do? So she's a single parent and she didn't marry again. So what did she do? She used to wake him up and she used to get him in the night and in the morning. She used to wake him up at the time of Al-Fajr, and she would take him, as you can imagine, by the hand, and she would take him to one of the main masjids in Baghdad. This is where he grew up. And if she was on prayer, she would pray with them. And if she was not on prayer, she would wait outside until he prays Al-Fajr, and then she would bring him back home. And she would do that every morning from the age of about 7 or 8 until he grew old and was able to do that for himself. She didn't fail in this. She was someone who gave him tough love, and he was then one of the imams of Ahl Sunnah. So wanting to be known, it's not something good. Ubaidullah ibn Abi Ja'far, he said, إِذَا جَلَسْتَ فِي مَجْلِسٍ, if you sit in a gathering, فَتَحَدَّثْتَ, and you talk in this gathering, فَأُعْجِبْتَ بِذَلِكَ, and you are impressed with what you're saying. You think to yourself, oh yeah, that was pretty good. فَأَمْسِكْ, then you should stop talking. If you're impressed by yourself, this detail you mentioned, or this bit of geography you mentioned, or you told someone something that they didn't know and they were surprised. If you're impressed with yourself, فَأَمْسِكْ, stop. وَإِذَا كُنْتَ فِي مَجْلِسٍ, and if you're in a gathering, وَسَكَتَّ, and you remain quiet in this gathering, فَأُعْجِبْتَ بِذَلِكَ, and you become impressed with that. Like, look at all these people talking, and I'm sitting here like the pious people. I'm not saying anything. Look how good I am. فَتَحَدَّثْ, then talk. Say something. Say something to move yourself away from being impressed with yourself. Obviously, it's good not to talk to save yourself from being sinful. But at the same time, a person shouldn't think just because people are talking about something that's not sinful, a person shouldn't think about themselves that they are better than them. They might be talking about something that's good. So it's important for a person to be humble. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّكُمْ لَتَغْفُلُونَ عَنْ أَفْضَلِ الْعِبَادَةِ التَّوَاضُعِ, that you, many of the companions, not the likes of Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, but others, not the ones that have a high rank, have a really high rank. He said to them that you are deficient in one of the greatest worships, which is being humble, humbling yourselves. There is also something else I wanted to touch upon, which for a while, I've been hearing things here and there. So, gifts. What do gifts do? Gifts bring hearts closer together. Gifts, they deepen the love between two people. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Tahadaw tahabbu," which means literally give gifts and the love will increase. Gift, it's an order. Gift to each other and the love will increase. Gift to each other, and because of this, Allah Ta'ala will create love in your hearts between you. Between the one who is giving the gift, the one that is gifting, and the one that is receiving. So for a husband to give this to his wife, or for a wife to give a gift to her husband, this is something good and recommended. Al-Baji, in his explanation of the Muwatta of Al-Imam Malik, says, Yuridu sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam means, and he said, Allah knows best, annaha min asbab at-tawasul, that it is gifting, it is a way to keep connections, it's a way to keep relationships healthy, it's something good, it's a way to keep contact. من أسباب التواصل التي تؤكد المودة, that reinforce, that strengthen love. وقد قبل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الهدية, and the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, indeed he accepted the gift. What is apparent from the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام is that if someone gifts, then this causes love, affection, and appreciation. Like, for example, isn't it the nature of fire to burn? Yes, it is. And it usually burns. Isn't it the nature of food to satisfy? Yes. And it usually satisfies, it fills you up. Isn't it the nature of a drink of water to quench the thirst? Yes, it usually quenches the thirst. You may say that in the same way, the nature of a gift is to bring two people close together. to bring their hearts together, to ignite or reignite a flame of love between them. This is something good between two brothers. A Muslim brother gifts something to another Muslim brother, or a Muslimah gifts something to her Muslimah sister, her sister in al-Islam, a father to his daughter, a mother to her son. As for now, after realizing that this is something in which Allah created this thing, like cause and effect. You put your hand on fire, it's going to burn you. The cause is the fire, the effect is the burn. This is the nature of the fire. You may say that also a gift, by nature, it will do this. So, what about a gifting between a non-married man and a non-married woman, or a married man and a non-married woman, or a married woman and a non-married man? This is something. Sometimes people, and this is where you've got to be careful, sometimes people can use the good, like gifting to something good. Sometimes people can use the good that exists in the world and exploit that. Use it for ulterior motives, to advance situations. Imagine a husband giving a gift to a woman who is not his relative and not his wife. Yani giving a gift, a man giving a gift to someone else's wife, someone who is his age or maybe slightly younger, but marriageable. What a tough situation the other husband is going to be in. Isn't that the case? The other husband, the one whose wife is receiving the gift. When he comes home and he finds that a man, not the leader of the awliya, okay, not al-Qutub al-Ghawth, but a man, Bashar, has given his wife a gift. Let's look at it another way. A woman comes and gives a married man a gift on her own. She might be, she's just naive. She doesn't know. Or, for example, she doesn't know. She's young, he's at an age at which she could get married, but she has no intention of marrying this man. And he has no intention of taking her as a wife, be it a second wife. She gifts him something without the knowledge of the wife. Let me tell you what some of my teachers said about this situation. They said that gifting is something good. But if you look at this situation, the situation of people, most people today, and the weakness that they've been afflicted with regards to religiosity, where it is feared between men and women that if something such as this would happen, this would, he said, يَفْتَحُ عَلَى كُلٍّ مِّنَ الرَّجُلِ وَالْمَرْأَةِ بَابًا مِّن شَرٍّ يَعِزُّ إِغْلَاقُهُ. That this would open up a door, a huge door of evil that would then be difficult to close. And the scholars mentioned دَرْءُ الْمَفَاسِدِ مُقَدَّمٌ عَلَى جَلْبِ الْمَصَالِحِ, which means avoiding harm takes precedence over seeking benefit. What is the benefit? The benefit is to do something that the Prophet ﷺ said is good. This is something beneficial. Okay. But what if in some situations with certain details that causes harm? Before moving on to mention what kind of harm, Abu al-Fatah al-Busti, this is a person who wrote verses of poetry about life. He says, أحسن إلى الناس تستعبد قلوبهم إنما استعبد الإنسان إحسانه. He says, be good to people. And what will that do? Literally, you will enslave their hearts. This is not something negative at first. Be good to people and you win their hearts over. إِنَّمَا اسْتَعْبَدَ الْإِنسَانَ إِحْسَانُ. That one of the only things that captures the heart of a human being is good treatment. Just let that stick with you for a while. That in itself is not something bad. Being good, this is rewardable. But there needs to be wisdom. When, or what harm, let's say, could this probably cause? Might a husband not say, why did such and such give you a gift today? Why did that man give you a gift? Might a wife not say to her husband, why did such and such give you a gift? What's going on? I mean, if you want to marry, then okay, again, then fine. But if that's not the case, then what is this? What's he going to say? Oh, nothing. It's nothing. Imagine then he is in a situation in which he has children or not. He might have children and he might not have children. And he's someone who doesn't feel, for whatever reason, a shaitan yuwaswisu lahu, yani, because of the shaitan, he's getting whispers, and he doesn't feel, he tells himself, or the devil tells him that you don't feel appreciated, do you, in your marriage? And he is always feeling these negative thoughts. The devil is playing with him. And then suddenly he receives a gift from someone. He receives a gift from someone, and he likes receiving these gifts from this other female. It takes away from the stress of his wife, the complaining of his wife, the pressure of his children. Where does this lead us? Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentioned in the Quran that the devil said, وَلَأُضِلَّنَّهُمْ وَلَأُمَنِّيَنَّهُمْ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ. The devil, he mentions that I will certainly misguide them by calling them to evil, decorating the haram for them. Remember, sometimes the devil, he might even tell you to do something good, but as a stepping stone to other things. Like sometimes our mashayikh mentioned that someone might be in a religious lesson and the devil will say, you know what, get up and pray 2 nafil. What's better, 2 nafil or the religious knowledge? Religious knowledge. Of course it is. So he will say, you know what, get up and pray 2 nafil. So it's not always about getting a person to sin. He is planning. Sometimes it's about doing something less rewardable in the eyes of the devil. And he said, I will most certainly hurl false hopes and dreams into their hearts, like living long lives and reaching worldly goals. And, oh, he might say, how I wish I had another relationship with a woman who is not married to me, just telling her my secrets, having her being my go-to person. Or for a woman to feel that she has 2 men to confide in, one being her husband, and the other one, the one who makes her feel good. He gives her gifts, her admirer. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith narrated by Al-Imam Muslim from the route of Jabir, Inna Iblis yada'u arshahu ala al-ma. Indeed, Iblis put his throne on water. ثُمَّ يَبْعَثُ سَرَايَاهُ. Then he sends his legions, his armies of devils to the different countries, to different areas. فَأَدْنَاهُمْ مِنْهُ مَنْزِلَةً أَعْظَمُهُمْ فِتْنَةً. That the closest to him are those that cause the most corruption. فَيَجِيءُ أَحَدُهُمْ, one of the devils comes forward to Iblis and says, فَيَقُولُ فَعَلْتُ كَذَا وَكَذَا, I did such and such among evil. And then Iblis, فَيَقُولُ مَا صَنَعْتَ شَيْئًا, that's nothing. He's got people to do something haram, but Iblis, la'natullahi alayhi tatra, says, ما صنعت شيئا, you didn't do anything, that's nothing. What's that? قال ثم يجيء أحدهم, then another one of the devils steps forward, and because they all want this appreciation, they want Iblis to be proud of them. فيقول ما تركته حتى فرقت بينه وبين امرأته. He steps forward with a new scenario and says, as for me, I did not rest until I split this Muslim husband and wife up. And we'll mention the implications of that and the consequences of that. فَيُدْنِيهِ مِنْهُ, so Iblis says, come closer. وَيَقُولُ نَعَمْ أَنْتَ, saying, yes, you. And in one narration, نِعْمَ أَنْتَ, well done, my son, well done. Why is that so important to the devil? Because this causing problems in the household, in their household, there is a wife, there is a husband, there are children, one or two, both, maybe the in-laws are living with them, maybe they are not. In this household in which they see lots of hardships, and there is arguing, constant arguing between the husband and the wife, constant. Eventually, if the devil, he whispers to both and he splits them up, this may cause trauma for the children. So how will these young Muslims grow up? What will they grow up to be if they don't have a constant father figure or a constant motherly figure? Both of them teaching them the religious knowledge, the religious manners. How will they grow up? This is why the devil starts at home. Like we say, charity starts at home. For the devil, wal-'iyadhu billah, this is where it starts also, at home, so that he would split up the family members. Because if the family members are split up, who is going to take care of the children's education? Who is going to take care of making sure, and this, in most cases, with ignorant people, it's like this. Who is going to take the child to learn religious knowledge? Who is going to be the father figure to teach the child that you need to pray al-Jumu'ah? Who is going to... So this is why this is a weak point that the devil targets. So imagine, added onto that, the devil sometimes, he may bring a male from outside the family to approach the wife, or a female from outside the family to approach the husband. And added on with all the stress that is going on, there would be a release. And there would be a lot of fitna. The devil, he is khabith, he's corrupt, but he knows what he's doing. So is it wise to bring people apart in this way? Going back to the idea of gifting. Is it wise for a marriageable male to give someone who is of a similar age, someone who could potentially be his wife, but is someone else's wife? Is it wise for him to go and give her a gift just from him? Is that wise? Or is this being naive and not fully encompassing the consequences of one's actions? Is it enough to say, but the Prophet said, give gifts, alayhi salatu wassalam? But you need to look at the situation. You need to look at the situation. It needs to be looked at from every single angle. At the very least, if someone wants to give a gift to someone of the opposite gender, someone who is of a similar age, someone who is marriageable, then give it to the person's spouse. Perfect. If you, oh brother, want to give a married sister a gift, you know what? Go through her husband. Let's see what he has to say about that first. If he says that's fine, then okay. But if you find yourself saying, through the husband, then there's something wrong, isn't there? And if you, sister, if you want to give a gift to a man, to someone's husband, then go through the wife. If it is said to you, go through the wife, and you're a bit, then there's something wrong, isn't there? But even then, what is the need? Because in any case, if this male gives someone's wife a gift, even through the husband, okay, mashallah, in the wife's heart, the appreciation for this man who is not a husband will increase. Okay, there will be a hint of, there'll be some appreciation, some love. Why? Why don't you gift that to your own husband? Or why don't you gift it? When was the last time you gave your husband a gift? When was the last time you gave your wife a gift? There's some statements in Punjabi that go very fittingly. Very, very fittingly. But I always leave them to the imagination. If someone of the opposite gender who is at an age at which they are marriageable and so on, it's wise to say, please give it to my wife. Give it to my wife. Yes, it's narrated that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he accepted gifts. Yes. Sulaim, who is the mother of our master Anas ibn Malik, radiyallahu anhuma, he said that my mother, it's narrated, he said my mother Sulaim, she made something for the Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, and she said, come Anas, take it to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And he did. But this is the Prophet of Allah. Come on. This is the Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. Kana yaqbalu al-hadiyya. He used to accept gifts. Alayhi salatu wasalam. One of the dangers that the scholars mention, subhanallah, or rather that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned, is that a fitna for this nation among the men is certain types of women. In general, you can't put a man and a woman together who are of a similar age, they are young, and without the fear of them being attracted to each other, or especially for the male. This is why we have the rule of al-khalwa, not being alone, not being alone with the opposite gender, where there is no third person watching, because of what might go through the mind of a male, what might go through the mind of a female. And the danger is then what might go through the mind of the male if he doesn't reject it, and then he would start going upon the path of starting to think things that are ill, that he shouldn't be thinking. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Why not cut that off from the beginning and not allow that to happen? Likewise, whether it's done even if it's done electronically, why not cut that off from the very beginning? This is not something praised, like I mentioned last time. It's not something praised for a man and a woman who are not planning to get married to be talking in a free way like this. It's not haram if a man and a woman they stand here, and there are lots of people here, and they talk, and they are not experiencing desire. He is lowering his gaze, and they're talking about something that's important. This is something that is not haram. This is permissible. This is permissible. But how many men, when they are talking to a female and they are looking at her face and then they experience desire, how many of them, when they're obligated to look away, look away? Or how many of them continue looking because they're shy to look away, because then the female will know, oh, he experienced desire, that's why he looked away. So if one doesn't want to be in that situation altogether, lower your gaze, or just don't get into that situation. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala ordered the men in the Quran to lower their gaze. And also, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, Al-hikmatu dalatul mu'min. That wisdom is that thing that a Muslim looks for in every situation. One of our mashayikh, Shaykh Nabil, may Allah protect him, Shaykh Nabil al-Sharif, one of the students of Shaykh Abdullah, he said that we were, even when our relatives used to come around, we used to sit in separate rooms. The men in one room, this is relatives, first cousins. The men in one room and the women in another room, like is popular in the Pakistani culture, or was. That the men, especially the elderly generation, of course, we sit in one room, the men sit in one room and the women sit in another room. It's just recently that this has started to, this situation has started to unfold. For men and women to sit in one room together, that's not haram. That's not haram. It's not even disliked. For them to attend a religious gathering like this, it's not haram. It's not disliked. It's something praised. They're all just listening to religious knowledge. Like the women, they would enter the masjid of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and they would pray behind him. He used to say, La tamna'u ima Allah masajid Allah. Do not prevent the female slaves, meaning the women, the free women and the slaves, do not prevent the Muslim women from entering the masajid. La tamna'u ima Allahi masajid Allah. Do not prevent the Muslim women from entering the masajid of Allah. وَلْيَخْرُجْنَ تَفِلَاتٍ. And let it be the case then that these women, if they are going to go to the masjid, then let them go without decorating themselves, without wearing decorative clothing, without wearing makeup, without wearing things that would potentially grab men's attention, without wearing perfume that is apparent. So it's not something haram. Otherwise, had it been haram for men and women to gather in one place, wouldn't the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam had turned around after prayer and said to the women, what are you doing here? So it's something permissible, it's something praised. But it's what that sometimes, if it's not in a controlled, if it's not in a blessed, if it's not in an honorable environment, then it can get out of hand. I remember I told you there was one of the students who wanted to get married to someone. He wanted to get married to one of the female students, and they were in their own class. When we were studying, there was a complete segregation. They had their own teachers, we had our own teachers. We would never mix. They would come in, they would learn, the women, they would come in, take the lessons, and then they would leave. We would come down from the dormitories, we would take our lessons, and we would go back up. And that's it. So when he wanted to get married, some of our teachers, what did they do? They said, you can meet her. We'll let you meet her twice, this female. And he sat with them. This particular teacher, he's called Sheikh Muhammad Sulaiman. He said, I'll sit with you both. So this is his sheikh, this person, one of my friends, his teacher, our teacher, who we revere and we hold in very high regard, said, I will sit with you. And he taught her too. He said, I'll sit with you both. And you can talk about, arrangements and so on. And you can do that for 15 minutes. So they met, the three of them, in a place, and they spoke, and he just sat there listening to every word. And then a second time also he did the same thing, because they were looking to marry each other. This is a safe environment. This is the way. He didn't say, our sheikh, he didn't say, well, look, just take each other's number, for example. Or even if he had, okay, as long as that's in a safe way, fine. But what we're talking about is someone who is not looking, for example, for marriage. Some males, subhanallah, some Muslim males, how sad it is that in these communities, they will treat some of our Muslim sisters, our daughters and so on, in ways, subhanallah, that they wouldn't, not that they should treat non-Muslim women like this, but that they wouldn't even treat them like that. Very, very sad situations, very, very sad stories, a very, very sad state. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to protect us. It's important that these issues, they are mentioned every so often, because we as a community learning religious knowledge, we're getting stronger and stronger, inshallah. Learning religious knowledge, this is what this community is built upon. Okay, all the Muslims, we wish that we and all the Muslims acquire religious knowledge, learn about the seerah, the life of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, live according to the rules that he taught. So we don't want it to be the case that bad habits reside or bad habits enter. What are the good habits? The good habits are those of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, not the habits of the people who, for example, are not Muslims. Their habits, if they don't agree with the habits of the honorable people, the Muslims, those who follow the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, then they don't mean anything. And we don't need to invent new habits. We don't need to copy. We don't need to imitate the non-Muslims. We don't need to try to be what they call liberal or modern or, new age Muslims. No. We have our sharaf. We have our honor. We have our habits. We learn the religious knowledge and we go according to the biographies and according to the lives of the pious people that have gone by. And this is what we want to teach our daughters. This is what we want to teach our sons. We want them to be honorable human beings, not following fulan and this person and that person, amongst those people that, one, they may not even be Muslims. And even some of those Muslims that you find nowadays, and on certain platforms, they are not knowledgeable people. So it's important that you and your children, I and my family, all of us, we attend gatherings of religious knowledge, because we'll only increase. We're not going to come to a gathering of religious knowledge and be harmed in some way. This is usually thought. We're not going to come and be harmed. We're not going to become and something's going to be taken from us. No. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned these gatherings as gatherings in which there are angels. Literally, he said there are angels in these gatherings. Why? Because Allah is mentioned. The Messenger of Allah is mentioned. And the rules of the religion, these rules that are sacred, are holy, this legislation, the Sharia, the rules that were given to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, truly they are blessed. So who would not want to hear them, even if they've heard them before? You might hear something that you've never heard before. You might hear something that you've heard a lot of times, but then it clicks. Sometimes I might be teaching and I mention something that I mentioned 4 or 5 times before, but then it actually clicks even more for me. It opens up my eyes to something else. This is the benefit of religious knowledge and carrying the sincere intention. We ask Allah wa ta'ala to grant us this sincere intention, and that Allah ta'ala facilitates for us the good deeds and death upon al-Islam. Ya Allah, make our children pious. Ya Allah, protect our wives, our daughters, our mothers, and our sisters. Ya Allah, grant the boys, grant our brothers, our fathers, and our friends, grant them to learn the religious knowledge and to honor themselves with it. Ya Allah, grant us death upon al-Islam. Walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بارك الله فيكم.